What happens when a CEO steps into his own diner, orders lunch, and uncovers the dark truth hidden behind forced smiles? Hello there. You're listening to an exciting story on the Soul Deep Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Even more amazing, I have a special message for you. If you leave a comment sharing the name of your country and your current time zone, that means fate has brought us together every day. Now let's dive in and enjoy this fascinating story together. Ethan Caldwell, the head of a small diner chain called Caldwell's Comfort with 13 locations scattered across the South, had spent a decade building his empire from scratch. He prided himself on creating a warm, family-like haven where people could sit down, laugh, and leave their troubles behind. But lately things had veered off course. Customers were constantly complaining about slow service and rude staff, while employee turnover soared as high as the dusty Texas summer winds. Ethan's regional managers patted their chests, assuring him everything was fine, but the whispers he caught in the office hallways told a different story. Frustrated and determined to see the truth with his own eyes, Ethan hatched a bold plan: disguise himself and infiltrate one of his own diners. He chose the location in Willow Creek, a 2-hour drive from his main office in Dallas, far enough that no one would recognize the big boss. Most of his employees had never met him in person, and Ethan took advantage of that. He grew out a scruffy beard like a wandering cowboy, ditched his expensive suits for a faded hoodie and torn jeans, and slipped on a pair of thick-rimmed glasses to hide the sharp gaze usually seen in his company website photo. Now he looked nothing like the polished executive who graced press conferences. Ethan walked into the diner at noon, the clamor of chatting customers mixing with the clinking of dishes, ringing out like a chaotic symphony. The dining area was clean but worn, the leather booths peeling in patches, not at all the cozy space he'd dreamed of when he started the business. A young waitress with tired eyes approached him, her name tag reading Lila. "Welcome," she said, her voice straining to sound cheerful but trembling as if it might break. "Can I get you something to drink first?" Ethan immediately noticed the faint dark circles under her eyes and the forced smile that seemed coerced. Something was off, but he brushed it aside for now. "Just coffee, thanks," he replied, sliding into a booth near the window. Lila nodded and hurried off, weaving through the tables with the practiced grace of someone accustomed to enduring. Ethan watched as Lila bustled through the crowd. She juggled a slew of orders, refilled drinks, and cleared plates from the kitchen, all at a dizzying pace. She was clearly exhausted, yet not a single grumble escaped her lips when she spoke to customers. Lila returned with Ethan's coffee, and he ordered a burger with fries. As she scribbled on her notepad, a man's voice thundered from the kitchen like rolling thunder. "Lila, what's taking so long? Slow again, huh?" It came from a short, stocky man in his 40s, wearing a grease-stained apron. Ethan pegged him as the shift manager right away. The guy hadn't even bothered to greet Ethan when he walked in, a small detail that made Ethan's brow furrow. Lila flinched, her shoulders hunching as if she'd been struck. "Yes, I'm on it," she called back, her voice cracking as she fought to stifle her panic. Ethan took a sip of his coffee, a wave of disappointment rising in his chest. He'd built this company on the belief that employees should be valued, not barked at like slaves in front of customers. As Lila disappeared behind the kitchen door, Ethan decided to keep watching. Conversations from nearby tables drifted into his ears. A family complained about waiting too long for their food, while 2 teenagers whispered about how the manager had just humiliated the waitress by splashing leftover coffee in her face right before her shift. A brutal act that sent Ethan's blood boiling. This wasn't the Caldwell's Comfort he'd dreamed of. This was a battlefield, where smiles were just a mask hiding the pain. Ethan sat there, trying to sip his coffee, but the murmurs from the surrounding tables echoed in his mind like the wind whistling through Texas plains. A family seated in the booth behind him grumbled incessantly, "It's been a damn hour just to get some food around here." The mother's voice thick with frustration. 2 teens at a corner table snickered to each other, their voices low but sharp as knives. "I swear, earlier that jerk manager slapped her right on the head just for dropping a spoon. What an asshole." The air in the diner hung heavy, like the sky before a storm, nothing like the friendly experience Ethan had envisioned when he laid the first brick for Caldwell's Comfort. Lila approached, carrying the burger he'd ordered, her eyes downcast, avoiding his gaze. "Sorry for making you wait," she whispered, her voice frail as if it might dissolve into the air. "No worries," Ethan replied, forcing a warm smile. "You're doing great." Lila's eyes flicked up for a moment, a spark of surprise flashing before she nodded quickly and turned away, her small figure darting through the crowd. Ethan had just taken his first bite when a choked sob from the kitchen stopped him cold, his fork hovering midair. The stifled crying grew louder, unmistakable now. It was Lila. He set the fork down, leaning forward to strain his ears. "I'm trying my best, okay?" Lila's voice broke through the thin walls, trembling as if she were on the verge of collapse. 6 hours without a break. I'm doing everything I can. Then a man's voice sliced in, cold and sharp as a blade. "If you can't handle the pressure, get out. Don't stand there whining. I don't have time for your nonsense." Ethan's stomach twisted, heat surging to his head. He couldn't sit still any longer. He shoved his chair back, abandoning his half-eaten burger, and marched straight toward the kitchen door. The sight before him clenched his chest like a vice. Lila stood there, hands trembling as she wiped tears with her sleeve, mascara streaking her cheeks. The manager, that short, stocky guy in a filthy apron, towered over her, hands on his hips, his face twisted with rage. He just dumped a full cup of cold water over her head, liquid streaming down her hair and dripping onto the floor. 2 cooks lingered in the corner, eyes averted, clearly unwilling to step in despite the discomfort etched on their faces. Ethan's fists clenched, his heart pounding like it might burst through his ribs. This wasn't the company he'd poured his sweat and tears into building. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice calm but firm as steel. The manager spun around, startled, then sneered. "Oh, nothing, just a little misunderstanding." Lila shook her head, tears still rolling down, whispering, "I'm sorry." Ethan looked at her, then shifted his gaze to the manager. He hadn't revealed who he was yet, but his tone deepened. "She looks like she's about to collapse. Why not let her rest for a few minutes?" The manager scoffed, flicking the last bit of water from his hand into Lila's face as if she were trash. "Rest? In the middle of the rush? We're short-staffed, there's no time for weakness." Ethan's jaw tightened, every muscle in his face straining. "There's always time to treat people decently," he shot back, his voice even but cutting like a dagger. The air in the kitchen thickened like fog, Ethan locking eyes with the manager. He knew he couldn't stay silent much longer. The man's lips pressed into a thin line, about to retort, when a wiry cook with a nervous edge suddenly spoke up. "Lila's been going non-stop since she clocked in. She hasn't even had a sip of water." His voice quivered, but there was a clear defiance in it. The manager whirled on him, barking, "Shut it, Travis. Focus on your damn job." Ethan's eyes darted to Travis, then back to the manager. "So who's making sure this team can actually function? Because from where I'm standing, the pressure's not from the work, it's from the way you're running this place." The manager's face flushed red, his confidence wavering. "I'm just doing my job. If they can't handle it, they can leave, simple as that." Ethan's eyes darkened, cold as ice. "We'll see about that," he said, his voice dropping low with a menacing edge. Lila, still wiping tears, glanced at Ethan with a mix of confusion and gratitude. "I'm fine," she mumbled, her voice faltering as she tried to step toward the door. But Ethan gently stopped her, placing a hand on her shoulder like a steady anchor. "Take 5 minutes," he said softly, "you've earned it." The manager opened his mouth to protest, but Ethan raised a hand, his tone unyielding and sharp as a blade. "She's taking a break. Right now." The manager started to snap back, his mouth gaping as if ready to roar, but Ethan cut him off with a raised hand, his voice icy and uncompromising. "She's taking a break. Right now." Lila hesitated, her anxious eyes darting between Ethan and the manager before she nodded shakily and slipped quietly through the swinging kitchen doors. Ethan turned to the manager, his voice low like tempered steel. "What's your name?" "Mitch," the man replied, his tone defensive, arms crossing as if building a wall. "And who the hell are you to come in here and boss me around during my shift?" Ethan ignored the question, his gaze locked on Mitch. "How long have you been managing this place?" Mitch shrugged smugly. "Almost 2 years. And I've kept this joint running smooth, so I don't need some random customer sticking his nose in my business." "Smooth?" Ethan interrupted, his voice rising, sharp as a gust slicing through the plains. "Staff burned out, customers complaining, and you standing there slapping them across the face mid-shift. You call that smooth? It's a damn mess." Mitch opened his mouth to argue, but Ethan shut him down again, his voice now a razor's edge. "You might want to rethink how you treat people, because if I were your boss, this crap wouldn't fly." Mitch's face paled for a split second, but he quickly masked it with a scoff. "Yeah, well, you're not my boss, so..." Before he could finish, the kitchen doors swung open and Lila re-emerged, her face slightly more composed though still downcast as she brushed past Mitch to return to the dining area. Ethan decided to step back and observe for now, but not before throwing Mitch a piercing look, sharp as a nail driven into wood, then following Lila out. Back at his booth, Ethan watched Lila resume her work. She moved slower now, her shoulders sagging under the weight of exhaustion, yet she still managed a faint smile for each customer. He noticed how she tended to a young mother struggling to calm her toddler, quietly bringing crayons and a menu for the kid to scribble on. But through the kitchen window, Mitch stood there, glaring at Lila like a hawk eyeing its prey. Ethan silently pulled out his phone, jotting down everything: Mitch's behavior, Lila's burden, the customers' complaints, and Travis's quiet courage in defending his co-worker. When he finished his meal, Ethan waved Lila over. "Can I get the check?" he asked gently. She nodded, swiftly returning with it and the receipt. "Thanks for stopping by. Sorry about earlier," she whispered. "No need to apologize," Ethan replied, slipping cash into the billfold. "You're doing amazing." Lila's cheeks flushed slightly, a rare, genuine smile breaking through. "Thank you." As Lila walked away, Ethan made up his mind. He wasn't done here, not by a long shot. He stood, grabbed his jacket and headed for the door, but before stepping out, he glanced back at the dining room. Lila was refilling a customer's coffee, her movements careful but effort-filled. Mitch was barking orders at Travis in the kitchen. Ethan's jaw clenched as he pushed the door open and stepped outside, pulling out his phone. "Sarah," he said when his assistant picked up, "clear my schedule for tomorrow. Get me everything we have on the Willow Creek staff. Files, performance reviews, the works." "Got it?" "Got it," Sarah replied without hesitation. "Anything else?" Ethan cast one last look at the diner before heading to his car. "Yeah," he said, "set up a meeting with the regional managers. We need to talk." He hung up, slid into the driver's seat, his mind already racing with plans. Tomorrow he wouldn't just observe, he'd take action. The next morning, Ethan returned to the diner just as it opened, still in the same scruffy disguise from the day before. This time he carried a small notebook in his pocket and a burning resolve. He wasn't here to stand on the sidelines anymore. The morning shift was quieter, free of the lunchtime chaos, giving him a clearer view. Lila was already on the floor, her movements deliberate but sluggish, her eyes more tired than the day before, her smile now just a thin line. Mitch hadn't shown up yet, but Travis was in the kitchen, busy chopping vegetables. Ethan waited until Lila passed by with a coffee pot, then called softly, "Hey Lila, got a minute?" She hesitated, glancing at the handful of customers scattered around. "Sure, but I can't stay long. We're short-staffed again." "I won't keep you long," Ethan assured her. "Just wanted to ask, how long have you been working here?" Lila blinked, caught off guard by the sudden question. "About 8 months. Why do you ask?" Ethan leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. Is it always this hectic?" Lila hesitated, her eyes flicking toward the kitchen window. "It's not always the customers, sometimes it's," she faltered, biting her lip. "Mitch, isn't it?" Ethan asked gently. Lila's head snapped up, a flash of panic crossing her face. "I shouldn't." "You don't have to say anything," Ethan cut in, his voice soft but firm. "I just want to understand what it's like for you here." Lila sighed, finally letting her guard down. "It's not just him. Everything's always a mess. Short-staffed, pressure up to our necks, and when things get tough he makes it worse. I know he's stressed too, but it always ends up falling on us." Ethan nodded, his mind reeling with what he'd just heard. He decided to dig deeper. "What about Travis? He seems like he tries to help." Lila's expression softened slightly. "Travis is great. He's only been here a few months, but he's one of the few who actually cares. He picks up the slack when people are struggling. Honestly, if it weren't for him, I'd have quit by now." "Travis is amazing," Lila said, her voice lightening as if finding a shred of comfort in mentioning him. "He's only been here a few months, but he's one of the rare ones who really gives a damn. He covers for everyone when they're drowning. Truth be told, if it weren't for him, I'd have walked out ages ago." Ethan was about to ask more, but the kitchen door burst open with a bang, and Mitch stormed out, his presence as overbearing as a bull breaking free from its pen. The air in the room grew heavy as lead in an instant. Lila's shoulders hunched, and she muttered a quick apology before scurrying off to refill a customer's coffee. Mitch didn't even glance at Ethan, instead barking at Travis, who was chopping vegetables in the kitchen. "Speed it up, you slug." Travis nodded silently, his hands moving deftly, though a flicker of defiance glinted in his eyes. Ethan's jaw tightened, watching the scene unfold as hot anger surged up his throat. This wasn't just job stress. This was a sick pattern rooted deep in the place. He let the morning play out, silently observing how Mitch treated the staff, shouting, berating, and at times splashing water in their faces like they were animals. The team kept pushing through, but the strain was etched into every face. By noon, the diner slipped back into its usual chaos, Lila darting between tables, her legs trembling as if they might give out. Then it happened. An older man in a flannel shirt waved Lila over, his voice gruff. "My eggs are overcooked." Lila flushed, apologizing quickly. "I'm so sorry, sir, I'll have the kitchen remake them right away." "Can't you just do it right the first time?" "It's not that hard," the man snapped. Lila stayed calm though her cheeks burned. "I'm sorry, I'll fix it right now." But Mitch, overhearing from nearby, charged out of the kitchen like a tornado, his eyes blazing as he glared at Lila. "What's the problem now?" he roared, jabbing a finger in her face. The customer waved him off. "It's fine, she's handling it." But Mitch ignored him, turning on Lila, his voice hissing through clenched teeth. "How many times do I have to tell you to check the orders before they go out? Where's your damn head at?" He raised his hand and delivered a sharp slap to Lila's head with a loud smack, making her stagger. "Enough." Ethan shot up, his chair screeching against the floor, the sound slicing through the room like thunder. Every eye turned to him. Mitch spun around, his face contorted with fury. "Who the hell do you think you are, barking orders here?" Ethan calmly pulled his wallet from his pocket, flipping it open to reveal his company ID. His voice was low but cut like a dagger. "I'm Ethan Caldwell. I own this diner, and the 13 others just like it." The room fell deathly silent. Lila froze mid-step, her eyes wide, her trembling hands still clutching the tray. Travis peeked out from the kitchen, his knife paused midair. Even the customers held their breath. Mitch's face drained of color, then flushed red as if scalded. I didn't know." "You didn't know," Ethan cut him off, his voice cold as ice, "because if you did, you wouldn't dare treat my staff like this in front of my customers." Mitch stammered, but Ethan gave him no room to recover. "In there. We need to talk," he commanded, pointing to the office behind the kitchen, his tone sharp as a blade. Mitch hesitated, then nodded stiffly, trudging off like a man headed to the gallows. Ethan followed, pausing only to look at Lila. "I won't let this slide," he said quietly, his gaze steady as a vow. Lila gave a small nod, her eyes red-rimmed but flickering with a fragile spark of hope. In the office, Ethan slammed the door shut and turned to Mitch. "Do you have any idea how far you've crossed the line?" His voice was low, but it carried the fury of a volcano ready to erupt. Mitch opened his mouth to explain, but Ethan raised a hand to stop him. "Save it. I've seen enough. You've been here 2 years, and in that time, you've turned my team into a toxic wreck. Do you realize what that does to morale, to customer service, to this whole damn company?" Mitch looked down, his last shred of arrogance crumbling. "I get it," Ethan continued, his voice unrelenting. "This job isn't easy. But that doesn't give you the right to treat people like garbage. To torment others the way you have." Mitch swallowed hard, his voice shaking. I can do better, You're done," Ethan interrupted, his tone final as a gunshot. "I'm firing you effective immediately." Mitch's head jerked up, his eyes wide with horror. "Wait, you can't." "I can," Ethan replied, his voice hard as stone, "and I will. HR will handle your severance, but as of now you're no longer part of this company." Mitch stood there, frozen like a statue, before giving a stiff nod and walking out of the office, silent as a banished ghost. Ethan exhaled, running a hand through his messy hair, his chest heavy. He didn't enjoy firing people, but this time it was unavoidable. When Ethan stepped back into the dining area, every eye turned to him like headlights cutting through a Texas wasteland. Lila and Travis stood near the kitchen, their faces a blend of shock and cautious hope. Ethan took a deep breath, his voice ringing out steady and strong. "I want to thank everyone for their hard work. Starting today, things are going to change around here." He looked directly at Lila and Travis. "You two meet me after your shift. We need to talk." The tension in the room began to ease, dissolving into a murmur of curiosity and relief. Ethan knew this was just the beginning, but for the first time in ages, he felt like he was steering his company back on course. As the last customer left and the lights in the diner dimmed, Lila and Travis lingered awkwardly by the counter, waiting for Ethan to speak. The hum of the kitchen appliances was the only sound left in the stillness. Both looked exhausted, but a fragile glimmer of hope flickered in their eyes. Ethan had spent the day observing without stepping in further, but now it was time to act. "All right, let's sit," he said, gesturing to a booth at the back. He slid into one side while Lila and Travis hesitated before settling across from him. Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, his voice warm but resolute. "First, I want to say thank you. I know today wasn't easy, especially with everything going on, but you both handled it with professionalism and heart, more than I can say for some of the so-called leaders this place has had." Lila glanced at Travis, unsure how to respond, while Travis fidgeted with the edge of his apron, eyes downcast. "I didn't realize things had gotten this bad," Ethan admitted, his voice softening with regret. "That's on me. I've been too detached. I built this company to be a place where people, staff and customers alike, feel valued. Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of that." Lila finally spoke, her voice tentative. "It's not all bad. I mean, I've worked worse gigs, but it's been tough here. I like the customers, I just wish—" She trailed off, uncertain if she should continue. "Wish what?" Ethan asked gently. Lila sighed. "I wish it felt like someone actually cared, you know? Not just about numbers or how fast we can turn tables." Ethan nodded, letting her words sink deep into him. "And you, Travis?" Travis looked up, his voice low but steady. "Honestly, I wasn't planning to stick around long. But I couldn't just leave, not with Lila and the others dealing with all this. Someone's gotta have their back." A stab of guilt pierced Ethan's chest. These two were the backbone of the place, holding it together while he'd been holed up in an office, trusting lifeless reports. "Then it changes now," he said, his tone firm. "I'm not just going to tell you things will get better, I'm going to show you." Lila and Travis looked at him, curiosity and skepticism mingling in their eyes. "Here's the plan," Ethan continued. "First, I'm bringing in a new manager, someone with experience but more importantly, someone who knows how to lead with respect. Until then, I'll personally oversee things here until we're back on track." Lila's eyes widened. "You mean you're staying?" Ethan nodded. "As long as it takes." Travis tilted his head. "What about Mitch?" "He's not coming back," Ethan said flatly. "I don't tolerate that kind of behavior, and neither should you." Travis let out a small breath of relief, while Lila's shoulders seemed to shed a 1,000-pound weight. "Second," Ethan added, "I'm overhauling the staffing setup. No more being short-handed during peak hours. I'll hire more people and make sure everyone gets proper breaks. You can't take care of customers if you're running on fumes." Lila managed a faint smile. "That sounds amazing." "Third," Ethan said, his voice softening with warmth, "I want to reward you both for keeping this place afloat through the storm. For you too, for everything you've done to keep this diner from sinking," Ethan said, his gaze locking onto them with genuine sincerity. Lila and Travis exchanged stunned looks as if they couldn't believe their ears. "Reward us?" Lila asked, her voice trembling, cautious as if it might be a dream. Ethan nodded, a warm smile spreading across his face. "Travis, you've shown incredible loyalty and leadership, even in the short time you've been here. I'm promoting you to assistant manager, with a raise and a steady schedule." Travis's jaw dropped, his eyes wide as shining coins. "Wait, are you serious?" "I've never managed anything." Ethan smiled gently. "You already have. You stepped up when no one else would. That's what leadership is." Travis blinked, his face a mix of shock and gratitude. I don't know what to say. Thank you." Ethan turned to Lila, his voice soft as a Texas spring breeze. "And you, Lila, 8 months of dedication even when things were at their worst. I see how much you care about the customers, your co-workers. You deserve more than just a pat on the back." Lila's eyes shimmered with tears, and she quickly looked down, embarrassed by the swell of emotion. "I'm just doing my job." "No, you're doing more than that," Ethan interrupted, his tone gentle but firm. "Starting next week, you're getting a big pay raise. And I'm setting up a bonus system for the staff, so effort like yours gets recognized." Lila's hand flew to her mouth, a soft, "Oh my God," escaping before she whispered, "Really?" "Really," Ethan replied, his smile lighting up like the dawn. For a moment, all three fell silent, letting the weight of his words settle deep into their hearts. Then Lila murmured, her voice choked with emotion, "Thank you. I mean it, thank you." Ethan leaned back, his gaze softening, brimming with feeling. "You both deserve it." The conversation wrapped up with Ethan outlining bigger plans, upgrading the outdated equipment, revamping the schedule, and holding regular meetings with the team to hear their voices. As they left the booth, Lila and Travis looked lighter than ever, as if the burden that had pressed down on them for months had melted into the air. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind. Ethan kept his word, spending days at the diner, working alongside the staff and listening to their every input. He personally interviewed candidates for the manager role, ultimately choosing Rachel, a seasoned woman with an empathetic leadership style that quickly won the team's trust. True to his promise, Ethan approved new salaries for Lila and Travis and brought in 3 additional hires to lighten the load. The atmosphere in the diner began to shift, like a cool breeze sweeping through Texas plains after a storm. Customers noticed the difference. Service was faster and the staff's smiles were now genuine, no longer forced. One afternoon, as Ethan prepared to leave for the main office in Dallas, Lila stopped him at the door. "Hey," she said, her smile radiant as sunlight, "I just wanted to say this place feels different now. Better. Like it actually matters." Ethan smiled, warmth flooding his chest. "It does matter. And so do you." As he walked to his car, Ethan felt a pride he hadn't known in years. It wasn't about profits or expansion anymore, it was about the people who made it all possible. He swore to himself that from now on, he'd never lose sight of that again. As the door of Caldwell's Comfort closed behind Ethan, the fiery red sunset painted the Willow Creek sky, signaling a fresh start, but would things truly stay peaceful as he hoped? While Lila and Travis began to reclaim light amid their dark days, a shadow from the diner's past was quietly stirring, poised to test Ethan's resolve. Would he have the strength to protect the people who'd placed their faith in him, or would another storm sweep it all away? Don't miss the moment the truth unravels, when loyalty is put to the test and the deepest secrets of Caldwell's Comfort come to light, all awaiting you in the next gripping chapter.